Hello book fans, I'm back again and I've just reviewed the Ian Rankin, hopefully. You should read that review, good book, definitely. Just read it, don't even watch my review. No, watch my review, like it. But this is the next book that I read, and I'm going in order of the way I read them for a change. This is called The Moth on the Mountain, a very interesting book, and it's about some kind of a northern Yorkshire dude, right? Who comes out of World War I and thinks to himself, I ain't got nothing to do, what shall I do? So he decides to fly his Tiger Moth aircraft out to the mountain and try and climb that said mountain. So the mountain we're talking about is Everest, and this was in the 1930s. So I think we all know, who know our history, how that will have gone, but nevertheless it's a very exciting story, and it's kind of a story about many things. Because his life is quite interesting. This dude, what's he called? He's called Maurice. I can't even remember. Maurice Wilson. Sorry, I keep mind like a sieve. Maurice Wilson. So his background is he comes from a kind of up and coming family up in Yorkshire, if that's possible. Yorkshire fans, of course it is. But he, his father had a weavery. What do you call it? You know, a mill basically, and it got passed down from his grandfather. So he's like the middle class of the north, and from that he had a decent upbringing, went to a decent school, that kind of thing. But he's also northern, has a northern accent. And we had the Great War, which came up. So he signed up to the Great War. He went in as a private, came out as a lieutenant, or a lieutenant, however we say that. I'm just going to drink this tea while I'm thinking. I've got a whole Oreo at the bottom. What do I do? It's not going to go well, is it? Shall I do it? For camera, I'm going to do the Oreo. Ooh. I think that's a 2 out of 5 experience. There's a tip. If you drop your Oreo, fish it out really quick, but don't just down it in one. Ugh. Not worth it. Anyway, so Maurice. So the guy's a bit of a bullshitter, to be quite honest, because he's a storyteller, and he's very much of the kind of, he wants to go out. He wants to go out and live the dream. You know, he wants to fly planes. He wants to go on adventures, go around the world, and he wants to have many relationships with different women as well. So he's that kind of fly-by-night character. So you think to yourself throughout, he's never going to climb the mountain, but nevertheless, this book is about climbing the mountain itself, Mount Everest, right? So obviously he is going to attempt to climb it, but will he get there? Will he walk his way up the mountain? So this book, it talks about the difficulties involved in what is, I suppose he's seen as a lower class person, because if you think about it, you know, he needs to involve like Tibet, the Dalai Lama, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of political string pulling that needs to happen in order for these British climbers to get involved in these expeditions up Everest. So at the time there was a couple of attempts in 1922 and 1924. Obviously they weren't successful, which meant he went for his dash back in the 1930s. And because of that political string pulling, he was just a lone guy, and basically what he said was, I'm going to climb that mountain by myself. I'm going to fly my Sopwith camel, what is it? It's a moth, a gypsy moth, to the mountain. I'm going to land on the slopes of Everest, and then I'm going to tuddle my way up, walk my way up. I'm going to do it using sheer willpower. So he did have a strong kind of Christian upbringing, and he did have some Christian faith, but he also had some Buddhist thoughts as well about fasting and the strength of willpower alone. So he was going to climb the mountain with willpower alone. So you will be, you know, shocked about his preparation and what he thinks is good prep for climbing a mountain. And the actual run up to it is, you know, quite shocking as well, because he basically is trying to fly in an old World War kind of one style aircraft, you know, biplane, from London over to Everest is a hell of a journey. And the fact that he even attempts that, people are all saying, you're all gonna die, And bear in mind, he didn't fly aircraft in World War One as I thought. He actually learned how to fly, and he got to the point where his instructor said, yeah, you're qualified to go solo. Maybe he had a few hours under his belt, but then he cracked on, and his entire flight to Everest, the journey there was longer than his entire flight time. I'm not going to tell you how far he got, and that might spoil it for you. But nevertheless, people underestimated him, and I underestimated him as well, because like I said, I think he's a nonsense guy. He just talks nonsense and then never follows through with stuff. And there's a lot of examples of his history of him going all around the world. He went and tried to live in New Zealand, for example, and he went over to America, that kind of thing. He's done a lot of things, and he's not stuck at anything until Everest. Yeah, I'm impressed by this guy, but I also think he has naivety, and he has some credibility as well. But the historical sources, there's not really enough. And the author, who's it written by? Ed Caesar. Ed Caesar, he's written based on he used another book by Robinson to help him to do this. So he has done a decent amount of research on top of that from historical records which have come to the fore, like records for ship transport, that kind of thing, flights and whatever. So it's good. It sounds like it's been well researched, and I think the writing does it justice to be a book about adventure, and it really gets you involved in him as a character. He's got a lot of character to him. He meets a lot of interesting characters. He has complex relationships, like with his friends. Shall I call them friends? Nobody knows. But he had a married couple friends, and they went out as a threesome. But who knows what kind of threesome? Very complicated guy. And does he go and attempt the mountain in the end? That is the main question about this whole book. And I think it was beautifully written, and there's some really good characters in it. And it's real. It's based on a real life story. I should say that. This is a kind of a historical record. It's hard to know how much of it is true, but certainly I think the general parts, the cruxes of it are true, and I think he's a very interesting character, well worth reading, but quick reader as well. It's only 200 and odd pages, so you will read it quickly. For that reason, I recommend getting it from a library, as I have. This is a library book, as you can see, look at the bottom. But overall, what kind of out of 5 experience is it? Well, let me think. It's a 5 out of 5 experience. This is a must-read book for people who are into adventurers, people who are into World War One as well. There is a fair bit of content about what he went through and what his family went through for World War One. It just wasn't just him; it was his brothers as well. There's a lot of complicated stuff on flight as well. That is a lot of good content, very, very good, and about bureaucracy and the system that tried to fight against him for making his Everest attempt, which puts the whole thing into question throughout the book, and you won't get until the end before you get resolve and get an answer. And even the acknowledgements are really good. There's some really good stuff in there. There's a lot of interesting stuff about this character. So for adventures, for just a novel about character and about interactions and about prejudices back in those days, and about how people interact with each other, what kind of relationships they developed. It's all very interesting. And Germany as well. They even talk about Freiburg. That's another important one for anybody who's into what comes after World War One. Freiburg is a big part of that. So culturally, this is an interesting book. I think you must read it if you're into history, if you're into adventuring. I've talked enough about this. Definitely read that. Definitely read Ian Rankin. Only The Flood though, I don't know about the other books. Read the Billy Connolly. I've only just started this, but that's a must read. He's a very interesting guy. Read them all. I'm telling you now, the Billy Connolly one will be out once I've read it. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Give me your thoughts on this book, adventuring book, any other recommendations that you have, and thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever, and subscribe for future content, or don't. It's entirely up to you, but have a most excellent day, whatever you do.